The apartment was dead silent, save for the low hum of the computer fan and the occasional car driving past the window outside. It was 3 in the morning, but sleep was the last thing on Alex's mind. He sat in the dark, the blue light from his monitor illuminating his tired face, highlighting the dark circles under his eyes. For the third time that night, he refreshed the page. The number didn't change. It still sat there, mocking him. 42 views. 42. That was it? He had spent hours editing the video, tweaking the color grading, and cutting the footage perfectly, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this would be the one. But the internet, it seemed, didn't care. Alex let out a long, frustrated sigh and leaned back in his chair, which creaked under the shift in weight. He rubbed his temples, trying to massage away the headache that had been building for days. It wasn't supposed to be this hard. Everyone made it look so easy. He scrolled through his feed, watching videos from creators he had grown to resent. They were vlogging from expensive cars, eating at 5-star restaurants, or just sitting in their perfectly decorated living rooms, talking about nothing for 10 minutes, and gathering millions of views in the process. Why them, he muttered to the empty room. What do they have that I don't? He watched a video of a guy just pranking people on the street. It wasn't even funny, it was kind of mean. But the comments were rolling in. People loved it. The attention, the engagement, the algorithm, it all rewarded the shocking, the loud, and the controversial. Alex had tried being nice. He tried making helpful guides. He tried being funny in a clean way. None of it worked. He was invisible. And being invisible felt worse than being hated, because at least hatred meant people were looking at you. The thought settled in his chest like a heavy stone. He needed a change. He needed to stop playing by the rules that were getting him nowhere. If the internet wanted a show, he was going to give them one. He didn't just want views anymore, he wanted to explode. He wanted to wake up tomorrow and be the name everyone was talking about. He craved that rush of validation, the feeling of finally mattering in a digital world that had ignored him for so long. He started searching. Not for ideas, but for targets. He needed someone famous, someone big enough that even a whisper of controversy would turn into a roar. But it couldn't just be anyone, it had to be someone the public felt strongly about. His mind raced through lists of actors and musicians. Then, he saw a trending post about Keanu Reeves. The internet loved him. He was the internet's boyfriend, the nicest guy in Hollywood. Stories about him giving up his seat on the subway or buying ice cream for fans went viral constantly. He was untouchable, a beacon of kindness in a cruel world. And that was when the dangerous idea sparked. Alex sat up straighter, his heart beating a little faster. If everyone loved Keanu, then Keanu was the perfect key to the kingdom. But the key wasn't to love him, everyone did that. The key was to disrupt the narrative. What would happen if someone challenged the nicest guy in the world? If someone poked the bear, just to see if it would growl? The contrast alone would be explosive. People would click just to defend him. They would click out of shock. And they would share it, saying, "Look at this terrible guy." Even if they hated Alex, they would know his name. He justified it to himself quickly, pushing down the small voice in his gut that told him it was wrong. "It's just a prank," he whispered, testing the words. "It's content. It's not like I'm hurting him. He's a celebrity. He can handle it." He wasn't a bully, he was a content creator experimenting with a format. That's what he told himself. He dug deeper, scrolling through forums and fan pages, looking for a pattern. He found rumors that Keanu was in New York City, filming a new project. Fans were posting sightings near a small deli in the village. It was a place known for good sandwiches and bad lighting, the kind of place a star might go to be left alone. Alex checked the dates. The sightings were recent. It was real. The plan began to form in his mind, piece by piece. It was simple, really. He wouldn't hurt the man. He wouldn't get physical. He would just be abrasive. He would insult him. He would say things that others were too polite to say. He would catch the reaction on camera. If Keanu got mad, it would be a viral sensation. Keanu Reeves loses his cool. If Keanu stayed calm, well, Alex could edit it to make himself look like the aggressor, sparking a debate about celebrity harassment. Either way, he won. The excitement bubbled up inside him, replacing the tiredness. This was it. This was the big break. He grabbed his notebook and started jotting down lines. Insults about his movies, jokes about his age, comments about his personal life. It felt harsh writing it down, but he kept telling himself it was for the greater good of his channel. It was for his career. He had to survive. He packed his bag with a nervous energy. Camera, extra batteries, a microphone, and his phone for backup. He looked at himself in the mirror by the front door. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright with a manic sort of hope. Tomorrow, he said to his reflection. Tomorrow, everything changes. As he finally lay down in bed as the sun started to peek through the blinds, he didn't feel the shame that would eventually consume him. He only felt the thrill of the hunt. He was going to ambush a man just trying to buy lunch, and in his mind, that was the price of fame. He had sacrificed his sleep, his money, and his morals, and now he was ready to sacrifice someone else's peace of mind just to be seen. The city outside was waking up, unaware of the ugly scene that was about to unfold in its streets, all for the sake of a few clicks. Alex closed his eyes, his heart racing, ready to become the villain in someone else's story, just so he could be the hero of his own. The next morning felt different. The city air was crisp, with a bite of cold that nipped at exposed skin, but Alex didn't feel it. He was running on pure adrenaline and a strange, jittery energy that coffee couldn't replicate. He stood across the street from the small deli, checking his watch for the 100th time. The morning rush was beginning to slow down, but there were still enough people around to make a scene if things went right or wrong, depending on how you looked at it. Alex adjusted the collar of his jacket, making sure the lens of his camera was peaking just enough to capture the action without being too obvious until it was too late. He had practiced this in his mirror the night before, walking through the angles, checking the audio levels, but rehearsing in a quiet apartment was nothing compared to the noise of the real world. He wasn't nervous about being seen, he was nervous about the timing. If Keanu didn't show up, this was all a waste. If he showed up with bodyguards, the plan would fail before it started. He needed a moment of vulnerability, a second where the actor was just a normal guy buying coffee or a sandwich. Alex leaned against the brick wall of a nearby building, trying to look casual, like he was waiting for a friend or just enjoying the city vibe. But his eyes were locked on the glass door of the deli. Then, the bell above the door chimed. Alex's breath hitched in his throat. A man walked out, head down slightly, holding a simple brown paper bag and a coffee cup. He was dressed in layers, a dark zip-up hoodie under a heavy coat, worn boots, and a baseball cap pulled low. To anyone rushing by, he looked like just another New Yorker trying to get through the day. But Alex knew that walk. He had seen it in 100 movies. It was him. Keanu Reeves? He looked tired in a way that pictures never captured, his shoulders slightly slumped as if he was carrying the weight of the world on his back. He wasn't walking with the swagger of a movie star, he was walking with the quiet rhythm of someone who wanted to get home. This was the moment. The golden minute. Alex pushed himself off the wall. His heart was hammering against his ribs so hard he could hear it in his ears. "Do it now," a voice in his head screamed. "Don't think. Just hit record." He raised his phone, hit the bright red button, and started walking. Every step felt heavier than the last, a strange resistance in his own legs trying to hold him back, but his ambition shoved him forward. He closed the distance between them in seconds. Keanu was about to turn the corner toward a quieter street. "Hey! Keanu!" Alex shouted, making his voice loud and sharp, cutting through the ambient noise of the traffic. Keanu slowed down. He didn't flinch or jump, but he stopped moving and turned his head. He didn't look annoyed initially, he looked cautious. He shifted the paper bag to his other hand, maybe anticipating a fan asking for a selfie or an autograph. When he saw the camera pointed directly at his face, a polite but guarded expression settled over his features. He didn't say anything, just waited. Alex didn't smile. He didn't act like a fan. He kept the camera steady, zooming in slightly on the actor's face, trying to catch every micro-expression. "I've been waiting here for you, man," Alex said, his tone aggressive, almost accusatory. "I wanted to ask you something." Keanu looked at him, then at the camera, then back to Alex's eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked. His voice was quiet, raspy, and incredibly polite. It was the kind of voice that made you feel bad for raising your own. That politeness threw Alex off for a split second, but he recovered quickly. He remembered the views. He remembered the 42 views on his last video. He couldn't back down now. "No, everything is not okay," Alex snapped, moving closer, invading Keanu's personal space. "I want to know why you keep making movies. You're done, man. You're washed up. Nobody wants to see you crying on screen anymore." A few passers-by stopped. A woman carrying a grocery bag frowned, her steps slowing as she watched the interaction. A couple of tourists looked over, confused by the sudden hostility. The atmosphere on the sidewalk shifted instantly. It went from a normal city morning to something tense and uncomfortable. Keanu didn't look angry. He looked confused, like he was trying to process why a stranger was attacking him for no reason. He took a small step back, trying to regain his personal space. "I think you have the wrong person," Keanu said gently, turning slightly to walk away. "No, I don't," Alex shouted, stepping in front of him, blocking his path. The camera was shaking now, not because Alex was scared, but because he was pumped up on the confrontation. He felt a rush of power. He had stopped Keanu Reeves. He had control. "Everyone thinks you're the saint, but you're just a fake. Your acting is wooden. You're just a sad old guy trying to stay relevant. Give it up, man." The insults hung in the cold air. They felt harsher saying them out loud than they had when Alex was writing them in his notebook. There was a cruelty to the words that tasted bitter in his mouth, but he swallowed it down. He looked for cracks in Keanu's armor. He waited for the actor to glare, to shout back, to tell him to get lost. That was the money shot. The John Wick rage. But Keanu didn't do any of that. He stood there, holding his coffee, looking at Alex with eyes that were incredibly sad. He didn't defend his career. He didn't brag about his success. He just looked at this angry stranger with a look that was almost pitying. It was as if Keanu felt bad for him, for needing to do this to get attention. "You seem really upset," Keanu said softly. He wasn't acting, he was just being a human being talking to another human being. "I hope your day gets better." He tried to sidestep Alex again. It was a dismissal, but a kind one. "Hey! Don't walk away from me!" Alex yelled, chasing him slightly, keeping the camera rolling. "I'm talking to you. Answer me. Are you too good to answer me?" The crowd on the sidewalk had grown. People were pulling out their own phones now, not to help, but to record the spectacle. A murmur went through the small group. "Who is that guy? Leave him alone. What's wrong with you?" The judgment was palpable. Alex could feel the eyes burning into him, but he convinced himself they were just looking at the famous actor. They were all part of the audience now. He was the director of this chaos. Keanu stopped walking again. He sighed, a heavy, tired sound that seemed to come from deep within his chest. He realized Alex wasn't going to stop. He turned fully around, facing Alex, but he didn't step closer. He stood his ground, but there was no aggression in his stance. His hands were loose at his sides. He looked exhausted. Alex aimed the lens right at Keanu's face, waiting for the snap. "Come on," Alex taunted, his voice rising. "Yell at me. Hit me. I know you want to. Show everyone who you really are." The silence stretched between them for 3 agonizing seconds. The city noise faded into the background. It was just the two of them. The hunter and the unexpected prey. Alex's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He was so close to the viral moment. He could feel the internet fame just inches away, waiting for the explosion. He pushed the camera forward, practically shoving it in Keanu's face, desperate for a reaction, any reaction that wasn't that calm, heartbreaking patience. For a split second, time seemed to freeze completely on that busy sidewalk. The noise of the traffic, the murmurs of the gathering crowd, and the sound of Alex's own heavy breathing all faded into the background. The only thing that existed was the space between the camera lens and the tired face of the man standing in front of it. Alex was hovering, vibrating with aggressive energy, waiting for the explosion. He was ready for the shouting match. He was ready for Keanu to get angry, to maybe push the camera away, to defend his ego. That was the money shot. That was the clip that would get 1 million views overnight. But Keanu didn't shout. He didn't roll his eyes or curl his lip in disgust. He just stood there, holding his paper bag of groceries, looking at Alex with a gaze that was so intense it was unsettling. It wasn't a look of anger, it was a look of profound sadness. It was the kind of look a parent might give a child who is throwing a tantrum because they are hungry or overtired, not judging the child, but feeling sorry for them. Alex felt a strange drop in his stomach, a flutter of confusion. This wasn't in the script. Usually, when people are harassed, they fight back or they run away. They don't just stand there and take it with a quiet dignity that makes the attacker look small. "You're still recording," Keanu said softly. It wasn't a question. He said it as a simple fact, his voice low and calm. "You really want this, don't you?" "I want the truth," Alex stammered, trying to regain his momentum. He was losing control of the narrative and he didn't like it. "I want people to see you're not a god. You're just a guy." Keanu nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "I am just a guy. And you're a guy, too." He shifted his weight, adjusting his grip on the coffee cup. "I think you might be going through a really hard time. I'm sorry if life has been tough on you lately." The words hit Alex like a splash of cold water. He wasn't expecting empathy. He was prepared for rage, for insults, for anything but this genuine concern. He tried to scoff, to make a sarcastic comment, but the words got stuck in his throat. The camera in his hand suddenly felt very heavy, like it weighed 100 pounds. The red recording light blinked, mocking him. "I'm not having a hard time," Alex lied, his voice sounding weaker now. "I'm a creator. I'm doing this for my channel." Keanu took a small step forward. He didn't invade Alex's space, but he closed the distance just enough to make the interaction feel personal, intimate. He reached out a hand. For a second, Alex flinched, thinking he was going to knock the phone away. But Keanu didn't touch the phone. He gently placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. It was a firm, warm grip, grounding and real. "We are all just trying to get through the day," Keanu said, looking Alex directly in the eyes. There was no acting here. It was just pure, raw humanity. "You don't have to do this to feel seen. You don't have to be mean to be important. You matter, just as you are, without the camera." The silence that followed was deafening. The people standing nearby, who had been ready to jump in and defend the actor, stopped in their tracks. They were witnessing something rare. It wasn't a celebrity confrontation, it was a masterclass in grace. Keanu wasn't fighting the darkness with more darkness, he was shining a light on it, and it was blinding. Alex didn't know what to do. His hand was shaking, making the footage blurry. He felt hot tears pricking the corners of his eyes, which terrified him. He wasn't supposed to feel bad. He was supposed to feel powerful. He looked at the screen of his phone, seeing Keanu's face full of compassion next to his own red, angry face. The contrast was ugly. He looked like a bully picking on a saint. Keanu gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze and then let go. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I really do." Then, he just turned around. There was no dramatic exit music. He didn't storm off in a huff. He just turned and continued walking down the street, heading toward his car, holding his groceries. He walked with the same slow, steady pace he had when he left the deli. It was as if the entire confrontation had never happened. He had absorbed Alex's hatred and simply let it pass through him, refusing to let it stick. Alex stood frozen, his arm still raised holding the camera. He watched Keanu's back retreating into the distance. A woman in the crowd, who had been glaring at Alex the whole time, walked past him and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "You should be ashamed of yourself." "Yeah," another man added, shaking his head. "That was pathetic. He was nice to you." The comments stung. They cut deeper than any insult Alex had prepared for Keanu. He looked around at the faces of the strangers. They weren't looking at him with awe or curiosity, like he had hoped. They were looking at him with pity and disgust. He had tried to trap Keanu, but instead, he had trapped himself. The viral moment he had just captured wasn't a story of a fan taking down a celebrity, it was a video of a kind man being harassed by a stranger who desperately needed help. He slowly lowered the phone. The screen went black as he tapped the stop button. The adrenaline that had been pumping through his veins began to drain away, leaving him feeling cold and empty. He looked at his reflection in the dark store window next to him. He didn't look like a successful content creator. He just looked lonely. The weight of what he had just done settled over him. He had gone out to hurt someone for profit. He had treated a human being like a prop in his own little movie. And the victim had treated him with more kindness in 2 minutes than he had probably shown anyone in months. Keanu had offered him patience, and Alex had given him nothing but poison in return. He stood there for a long time as the city bustled around him. People rushed to work, taxis honked, life went on. But Alex felt stuck. He had the footage. He had the video. He could still upload it. He could still try to spin the story. But as he stood there replaying Keanu's voice in his head, "You don't have to be mean to be important," he knew that uploading it would be the biggest mistake of his life. The reaction he wanted wasn't the reaction he needed. The view count didn't matter anymore. All he could think about was the sad, gentle look in the actor's eyes that had seen right through him, past the camera, past the anger, and straight into his unhappy heart. The walk back to the apartment felt infinitely longer than the walk there. When Alex had left, the city streets had seemed like a runway to success, full of opportunity and energy. Now, they felt gray and hostile. Every siren sounded like a warning, and every glance from a passerby felt like an accusation, even though they didn't know what he had just done. He kept his head down, clutching his phone tight in his pocket. The device was burning a hole through his jeans, or at least it felt that way. It wasn't just a phone anymore, it was evidence of his mistake. When he finally walked through his front door, the silence of the room was no longer peaceful. It was judgmental. The setup was exactly as he had left it: chair pushed back, monitor glowing, coffee cup staining the desk. It looked like the cockpit of a pilot who had just crashed a plane. Alex sat down heavily, the chair groaning under the weight of his regret. He pulled the phone out and connected the cable to the computer. The file transferred with a beep that echoed in the quiet room. He opened the video editor and dragged the clip to the timeline. He watched it again on the big screen. Seeing it larger than life made it worse. He could see the tremble in his own hand, the redness in his own face, and the desperation in his own voice. In 4K resolution, his insecurity was palpable. He looked loud, abrasive, and small. Then, the camera would pan to Keanu. Even through a screen, the actor's calmness radiated. The contrast was painful. Alex looked like a storm, wild and destructive, while Keanu looked like the mountain that the storm breaks against, unmoving and solid. Alex paused the video. He hovered his mouse over the delete button. A voice in his head, the same one that had told him to do this in the first place, whispered that he could still stop. He could scrub the file, pretend it never happened, and go back to making videos with 42 views. But another voice, louder and more desperate, screamed that this was his only chance. He had crossed the line. There was no going back now. He had to see it through. "I can fix this with the title," he muttered to himself. "If I frame it right, they'll understand." He typed out a headline that was designed to grab attention: "Keanu Reeves loses it on fan. The truth Hollywood doesn't want you to see." It was a lie. Keanu hadn't lost it. He hadn't raised his voice. But Alex needed people to click. He needed the numbers to go up. He hit export and then upload. As the progress bar filled up, Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt sick to his stomach, a cold, twisting nausea that made him want to lie on the floor. When the video went live, he sat staring at the screen, refreshing the page every few seconds. Nothing happened. For 20 minutes, the view count sat at 0. He began to panic, thinking he had wasted his energy for nothing. And then, it started. 1 view. 5 views. 20 views. Then, a notification popped up. Someone had shared it on Twitter. Then a famous gossip account retweeted it. The graph on his dashboard suddenly shot upward, a vertical red line climbing higher and higher than he had ever seen. "Okay," Alex breathed out, a nervous smile twitching on his lips. "Okay, this is it. This is what I wanted." He opened the comments section, ready to read the praise. He expected people to be discussing his boldness or debating his points about Keanu's movies. He thought he would be the topic of conversation, but the comments were a wall of fire. "Who is this loser? Why would you do that to him? He was just buying lunch. This is literally painful to watch. You look like a bully. Keanu is a legend. You are just pathetic." Alex's smile vanished. He scrolled faster, his eyes darting across the screen, looking for one person, just one, who was on his side. "I feel bad for Keanu, but honestly, look at the guy filming. He seems desperate for attention. It's sad. Imagine trying so hard to go viral that you insult the nicest guy in Hollywood. Get a life, man." The words stung. They were sharper than any insult he had ever thrown. It wasn't just that they hated him, it was that they pitied him. They saw through the act. They saw a lonely, angry man taking his frustrations out on a stranger. The fame he had craved was arriving, but it was covered in mud. He wasn't a viral sensation, he was a public villain. He checked his social media mentions. They were exploding. Memes were being made. Screenshots of his own red, angry face were circulating with cruel captions. Someone had found his old videos and was leaving nasty comments on those, too. The internet, usually a place of distraction for him, suddenly felt like a giant room where everyone was pointing at him and laughing. Alex stood up and paced the small room. He felt trapped. He wanted to turn off the computer, but he couldn't look away. It was like watching a car crash that he had caused. He went back to the video and watched it one more time. He turned up the volume. He heard his own voice, shrill and mocking. Then he heard Keanu's voice. "I think you might be going through a really hard time." The words hit him differently now. Before, they had just been a tactic to deflect the insult. Now, hearing them over the sound of his own heavy breathing in the video, they felt like a diagnosis. Keanu had seen him. Not the persona he was trying to project, but the real him, the broken, unhappy guy underneath. The view counter ticked past 100,000. It was a number he had dreamed of for years. He should have been popping champagne. He should have been calling his friends. Instead, he sat on the edge of his bed and put his head in his hands. The thrill was completely gone. The views felt dirty, like counterfeit money. He hadn't earned them through creativity or hard work, he had bought them with his dignity. He had sold his own humanity for a few minutes of attention, and the price was too high. He looked at the screen again. The comments were still pouring in, thousands of them, united in their disgust. He realized then that he hadn't exposed Keanu Reeves. The video had exposed Alex. It had shown the world exactly who he was, and he didn't like what he saw. The silence of the apartment returned, but this time, it was deafening. The adrenaline faded, leaving him alone with the cold, hard truth: he had won the internet, but he had lost himself. The night passed in a blur of restless tossing and turning. When Alex finally woke up, the sun was high in the sky, glaring through the thin curtains of his apartment. For a few seconds, as he blinked his eyes open, he forgot what had happened. He stretched, expecting the usual feeling of dread about going to his dead-end job or checking his failing channel. Then, the memory crashed down on him like a heavy wave. The confrontation. The video. The comments. He rolled over and grabbed his phone. His hand was trembling. The screen lit up, showing a flood of notifications. Thousands of them. A part of him, a small, dark corner of his ego, hoped that maybe the tide had turned. Maybe people had changed their minds. Maybe they thought he was edgy or real. He tapped the screen. The first comment he saw was, "You are literally the worst person on the internet." The next one was, "I hope Keanu presses charges." Another one simply said, "Sad." Alex threw the phone onto the bed and buried his face in his hands. He felt sick. It wasn't just anger, it was shame. A deep, burning shame that started in his stomach and spread to his fingertips. He sat up and looked at his computer screen across the room. The video was still there. It had over 200,000 views now. It was his most successful piece of content ever. And he hated it. He hated it with every fiber of his being. He walked over to the desk and sat down. He played the video one last time. He watched himself, loud and aggressive, blocking the path of a man who just wanted to eat his lunch. Then he watched Keanu. He watched the way the actor didn't fight back, but instead offered kindness. "You don't have to be mean to be important." The words echoed in the quiet room. Alex realized then that he had spent the last year trying to be important by being loud, by being controversial, by being anything other than himself. He thought that to be seen, he had to be spectacle. But Keanu, one of the most famous people on the planet, didn't need a spectacle. He was important because of who he was, not what he did for attention. The irony was suffocating. "I can't leave this up," Alex whispered to the empty room. "I can't let people keep watching this." He moved the mouse over the settings. He hovered over the delete button. It felt like jumping off a cliff. If he deleted it, he would go back to having 0 views. He would go back to being invisible. But keeping it felt like carrying a bucket of slime around with him everywhere he went. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and clicked. The screen refreshed. The video was gone. The views were gone. The viral moment was erased. Just like that, the adrenaline rush of the previous day vanished, replaced by a strange, quiet peace. He had given back the fame he had stolen. But he wasn't done. He knew that deleting the video wasn't enough. The internet was forever, screenshots were already out there. He had to face the music. He opened a new document. He didn't open his video editing software. He opened a simple text editor to write a post. He stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. What do you say when you've been the villain in someone else's story? He didn't want to make excuses. He didn't want to blame editing or a skit gone wrong. He needed to be honest. He started typing. His fingers were clumsy at first, but then the words began to flow. He wrote about his desperation for views. He wrote about his frustration with being invisible. He admitted that he saw Keanu not as a person, but as a tool to get famous. He wrote about the moment on the street, how Keanu had been kind when he didn't have to be. He wrote about the shame he felt now. "I tried to destroy a good man just to feel big," he typed. "And instead, he showed me how small I was acting. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive me yet either. But I wanted to say I am sorry. Not to the internet, but to him. Keanu, if you ever see this, I am sorry I ruined your Tuesday." He read it over. It wasn't perfect. It was full of grammar mistakes and rambling sentences. But it was true. He hit post. Then, he turned off the computer. He didn't wait for the likes or the comments. He didn't want to see them right now. He just needed to breathe. He spent the next few days offline. It was hard. He was used to the constant dopamine hit of the internet, the noise, the arguments. Without it, the silence was deafening. He took long walks through the city. He looked at people differently now. He saw the tired workers, the busy parents, the homeless people on the corner. He realized that everyone was fighting a hard battle, just like Keanu had said. Everyone was trying to get through the day. He had been so focused on his own struggles that he forgot everyone else had them, too. On the third day, he walked past a small park. An elderly woman was struggling to pull a cart filled with groceries up a steep set of stairs. She was sweating and looked exhausted. Alex stopped. He looked around, instinctively checking to see if anyone was watching. For a second, the old habit kicked in: should I film this? It would make a great good deed video. But the thought made him stomach turn. He didn't want to be the guy who filmed kindness anymore. He just wanted to be the guy who was kind. He walked up to her. "Can I help you with that?" he asked. She looked up, startled, and then smiled with relief. "Oh, thank you, young man. These stairs are terrible today." Alex grabbed the handle of the cart. It was heavy. He lugged it up the stairs, his muscles burning. When they reached the top, she reached into her bag and offered him $1. "No, no," Alex said, holding up his hands. "I don't want money. Just have a good day." "God bless you," she said, patting him on the arm. She walked away, and Alex stood there for a moment. There were no cameras. No views. No likes. No viral sensation, just him, standing on a sidewalk, helping someone. He realized he felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't the electric buzz of internet fame. It was a quiet, steady warmth. It felt real. He walked home and sat down at his computer. He turned it on. The hate mail was still there, buried in his inbox, but he didn't look at it. Instead, he opened a blank page for a new video. He didn't have a title yet. He didn't have a flashy intro planned. He just started talking to the camera. He didn't yell. He didn't insult anyone. He didn't try to be shocking. He just talked about the week he had. He talked about how he lost his way, and how he was trying to find it again. He talked about the lesson he learned from a stranger on a street corner, that you don't have to be loud to be heard, and you don't have to be mean to matter. He uploaded it without any clickbait titles. He just called it Trying to Be Better. He knew it wouldn't get 1,000,000 views. He knew the people who hated him would probably still hate him. But as he watched the upload bar finish, he finally felt okay with that. He wasn't chasing the numbers anymore. He was chasing the feeling of being a decent human being. And for the first time in a long time, when he looked in the mirror, he didn't feel the need to look away.